when it becomes time to discuss your family's vacation to that beautiful tropical beach, a rafting trip down the Grand Canyon, a business meeting on the other side of the world. Whatever your destination may be, this video will give you some ideas and tips on how to plan and what equipment to bring to enjoy fishing at your destination. Google is your friend in setting up your plan. Search for the Department of Fish and Game for the state or the country that you're going to. This will give you an idea of what fish are available in the area that you're going to. Next, decide if you're going to hire a guide or do the trip on your own. Use Google Maps to identify potential spots to fish. Use social media sites like floridasportsman.com, microskiff.com, and various kayak forums to find out more information about the areas you're going to and also the fish you're pursuing. What I have here on this table is equipment that falls into three categories. Equipment that you have to have, equipment that is important to have, and equipment that is nice to have. I'm going to go over the three different categories. In the equipment that you absolutely have to have is, of course, your fishing rod, reel, and lures that you're going to bring on the trip. When I go on a trip, my go-to rod is a 7-foot, 4-piece LL Bean graphite rod. I've had this rod for about 10 years. I've taken it around the world. Works well. It's a medium action 7-foot rod, and you can pair it up with a lot of nice reels and do well with it. This last year at Christmas, someone gave me as a gift a telescoping rod, and I actually really like this. It's very easy to set up. Basically just push it out like that and line up the guides and put on your reel. Once you get it set up and you're done fishing, what's nice is that you can just collapse it down like this real quickly. You can leave your reel on it, unlike this here, and then just put your hook on this hook minder that's at the top of the guides. This is really nice because now you can throw this in the trunk of the car and not have a fishing pole in the cab of the car that might get in the way of other passengers. Also, I like to bring another backup rod. I have an inexpensive Daiwa rod they sell in any Walmart or a lot of good sporting goods stores will have these. They're made by Daiwa. It's a 4-piece rod. It's about 7 foot long too. Doesn't quite have the action of the LL Bean. The LL Bean, if I didn't mention it, sells for $100. This is $40. And this particular telescopic rod that's made by Sugaling is $30. Also, many times I like to fly fish, and again I like bringing a multi-piece rod with me for that. One of the rods that I use the most is a Cabela's 7-piece rod. It fits into a tube about 20 inches long. It doesn't take a whole lot of space up on the plane. The next thing is your tackle. Depending if I'm going fly fishing, if I'm going to be using baits in freshwater or saltwater, that will determine what type of lures I bring with me. Most of the time I'm going to be fishing saltwater. I'm going to bring a light colored jig, and I'm going to bring a body that's darker colored. With the two contrasting colors, one of them that's going to work. I'll also bring a selection of crankbaits to get down deeper in the water column. And then when I'm fishing in freshwater, I basically do the same thing. This is an assortment of baits that I put together for a trip that I did last week up to Missouri. I was able to use the baits that were in this box to catch walleye and bass. And I'm going to go at the end of this tape in the bonus section and go over the 3 lures and flies that I take with me around the world and will work very well in catching fish for you. So we've talked about the rods. We've talked about the reels and the baits. Again, with the reels, just one other thing is I always collapse the handle to take up less space in my luggage. I always put the line on the line tender here on the side and take the lure off. That way, if TSA is going through my luggage, they're not going to get stuck on something on this reel. You can wrap the reels in like a t-shirt, or if you want to have a little bit added protection, save the box that they came in and put them in that. Okay, so moving along here to the important items to have.
one of the things that a lot of people overlook is footwear. And one of the best pieces of footwear that I have ever used has just been the simple Croc. I've used these in freshwater and saltwater, running across rocks, camping out on islands where there's all kinds of sand spurs, going through frozen creeks up in the Arctic Circle. These work really well because you can get them wet, and within a few minutes they're completely dry. Other types of wading footwear also work out really good. These are sandals that I've had for probably about 5 years or so. They have felt on the bottom of them. What's good about this is if you're wading freshwater creeks where there's moss on top of the rocks, the felt will give you a lot better purchase on the rocks. The other thing I found that felt was really good for is it gives you very good traction on the lava rocks, like you're fishing in Hawaii from the shore and you don't want to fall. Having a felt-lined sole is a very good idea for you. But the unfortunate thing about both the Crocs and these sandals, these wading sandals, they're not too stylish, and if you're going out to dinner or casual attire with your wife or friends, you might want something that dresses up a little bit better. For that, I use this other pair of Crocs. They're from the Swiftwater line. There's several types of varieties in the Swiftwater line, and I like this one specifically because it has a leather side on this sandal, and that holds your foot a little bit firmer, where the other Swiftwater ones just have this flimsy material through the whole sandal, and that doesn't give you a whole lot of lateral stability if you're going through swift water or climbing on rocks. Also, with any kind of footwear that you go for, look for something that has a good toe guard on it. With these sandals, you get them completely wet. If you leave them in the sun, within a couple of hours, they'll be dry. If you don't get your footwear dry before you get on the plane or before you get in the car, you're going to have a smell problem. So you definitely want to pick your footwear well, that it dries quickly, so you don't have a bigger problem with you after your fishing is done. One other tip I'll give you, if you're using wading sandals, a lot of times I'll hike in using just my wading sandals, or I'll be backpacking just wearing my wading sandals, but I'll get sand that would get between my foot and the sandal and would cause an abrasion. So what I started wearing were these hydro socks. They give you a couple of advantages. They protect your foot inside the sandal so you don't get those abrasions, and also if you're in cold water, they keep your feet warm so you can go wet wading and not have to carry waders. Which brings me to the next topic, which is what I call the nice to have. If you're going to be in a lot of cold water environments, you can bring waders. There's two types. There's boot waders that have the boot permanently attached to the wader. There's another type, which is what these are here, called stocking foot waders. You can compact them a lot smaller. The only thing you have to do is that you bring some type of footwear like the wading sandal or a wading boot to put over the top of them. Again, that's a good option if you're going to be in a lot of cold water, like say chest high or so, and you want to stay warm. Another nice thing to have if you're going to be wading in streams for stability and also for safety is a wading staff. You want to make sure that you get one that is very sturdy and also can compact down and come apart like that. You can adjust it to the different lengths that you need. These will help you get across the stream without falling. So either you could hurt yourself or lose equipment, so it's worth the investment in the wading staff. The other thing a lot of people don't think about is bringing a compass. This is my everyday compass that I use when I'm in the United States. But I do a lot of overseas travel, and I didn't realize this until I started doing a lot of travel, that there's actually 5 different magnetic zones, and depending on which zone that you're in, it'll affect how your compass works. So I actually went ahead and paid, I think it was about $100 for this Suunto compass, so that wherever I'm at in the world I can find my way back home again. Again, I have a watch that has a GPS on it. A lot of people have that. You may have a cell phone that has some type of navigational device on it, whether it be a GPS or a compass. Those are great, but batteries can go dead. It's always good to have a compass with you. Another nice thing to bring with you is a lighter. You can't bring this on carry-on, and you can't bring it in a check bag. So this would only be if you're car camping or if you got someplace and you want to bring a lighter. or just go into Walmart or some other convenience store and buy a inexpensive Bic lighter. But if you're out in the wild, you might fall in the creek, you might get wet, you might want to start a fire. On the other side, you might caught a fish and you want to have a streamside lunch. You have a lighter, you can start a fire and cook your fish. Another thing too I always bring with me is a flashlight. This particular one is a headlamp. Nice thing about that, keeps your hands free again if you're walking through woods. Great way to find your way back from the fishing spot at night if you fish late. Also with your eyewear, with your sunglasses, two things. Always bring a case to protect them when I'm not wearing them in the plane. Also I have some kind of string, or I guess they also call them croakers, that if I want to let them hang on my neck and not have to have my hands on them, works out great, and then they're ready for you when you need to put them back on. The other thing that's very important, people who fish in high altitudes, meaning anything over 5,000 feet, you can get altitude sickness very easily. If you're on a plane, you get to some place that's a high altitude. I live in Florida. I'm at sea level. I go to Denver, let's say. I'm at 5,000 feet. Just walking around downtown, if you're not careful, you get altitude sickness. Drinking a lot of water will help you manage the altitude sickness. A lot of times you can't take away all of the symptoms of altitude sickness, but one of the best ways is drinking water. Also, if you get dehydrated when the Florida sun, that's bad for you too. Be sure you bring a good hat with you. You can get by with a baseball cap, but now that I spend more time out in the sun, I like the broad brim to get more protection. One other thing I'll bring up on the nice to have category is a pair of hemostats. Now, according to the TSA website here in the United States, you can get by with anything that doesn't have a sharp point that's more than 4 inches from where the pivot point is, right here on this pair of hemostats. But I've actually had TSA confiscate these hemostats at some airports. So I buy these in bulk for about $2 or $3 a piece at either Dick or Academy Sporting Goods, and that way you're able to get your hooks out of the fish, not do them damage, and also not bend your hooks trying to get them off, trying to get them out of the fish. The other thing too that I want to bring up is about packing for the trip. A lot of times I just use a backpack and a dry bag to carry my clothes. I took a trip up to Alaska. I was going to be flying in a bush plane, and they absolutely cannot take large suitcases on a bush plane. So you have to have your clothes, your fishing gear in small containers. So I had this backpack and also this dry bag that also has backpack straps on the back, along with the carrying handle here. So what I would do is I'd wear the backpack on my back, and then I'd carry this like a laptop case, and that way I was able to get both bags on the airplane with no problem. The other thing too that I'll bring up about with your tackle, if you have lures that have small hooks, and I'm going to take one out of this case just for an example, hooks that aren't any bigger than about that, which I would say is about a size 3 treble, maybe a size 2. You're not going to get in any trouble with TSA, or at least I never have in all the years that I've traveled. If you are carrying a lot of saltwater lures, or like if you're a musky fisherman, you have some of those bigger lures with the bigger treble hooks, you may run into some of the trouble with TSA for carry-on bags. But if you put those in your check bags, you're okay. Again, I try and do everything on carry-on bags just because I don't like checking fishing equipment because it can get lost. Nothing's worse to get your destination and not have what you want to bring with you. The other thing too is that I showed you the bigger tray, but I'll also use these smaller trays if I'm going to be using a fanny pack. And I know all the jokes about fanny packs, but these things really come in handy to carry a lot of gear with you when you're going back in the backcountry for a day or more. Again, with my trips over to Europe and also up in Alaska, something like this can hold a lot of equipment, are really handy. And again, I can swap out these trays to change what lures that I need and save a lot of time in doing that. And then some days you don't need to carry a lot of gear, and I have a different pack for that. And again, usually I'll do my pre-trip planning. I'll figure out what I'm going to need. I'll decide I'm either going to bring this or bring that pack. I never bring both. But another nice thing and a trick for you when you're going on the plane, I showed you the dry bag and I showed you the backpack, what I carry. But what I do with my fanny pack is that you'll see a lot of backpacks that have a detachable hood storage area. This particular backpack does not, but what I do is I keep an assortment of carabiners on my backpack, and just by going through the handle there, I can attach it there. So from the airline's perspective, they view that as one bag, and I just walk on with that bag and it goes in the storage compartment just fine. So again, that's a tip to save you on space. Another thing with the airline to make it so that you don't raise any problems for the other passengers is you keep your equipment stored as compactly as possible. And what I can do with the type of backpack that I have, being it has water bottle holders here on the side, is I can take and put the fly rod or the spinning rod in the water bottle holder and connect it with the compression strap, and then that's held in there nice and safely. I can also take and put a carabiner on here if I want to make it a little bit more secure, and then I can also use a carabiner on my water bottle to attach that, and everything's nice and compact on one unit. So again, that shows you how you can save space, how you can travel and pack all your goods. Again, you don't want to carry anything that's sharp like a knife. If you use braided line, you usually use a pair of scissors to cut that. What I've done is I've gone to hotels and I'll go to the front desk and say, hey, I need to fix something. Do you happen to have a sewing kit? And they'll have these small sewing kits that will have a pair of almost like disposable scissors in them. And those scissors will work to cut braid. But if worse comes to worse, go to a drugstore or something, pick up a pair of scissors that you can use during your trip, and then when you get through, just get rid of them or leave them at the hotel, because they're not going to go through TSA or airport security wherever you may be located in the world. Also, another thing I need to mention is I talked about always bringing my fishing rods on the plane with me. I've run into some challenges with fishing rods in some countries. Like for instance, I went to Australia. Flying to Australia, I had no problems bringing my rods onto the plane as carry-on bags. But when I went to leave the country, they wouldn't let me carry on my fishing rods. I tried to debate with them for, like say 20 minutes, but there was no go with that. They said it was some rule the U.S. had. Don't know if that's true or not, but I had to put my fishing rods in my checked bags. So you want to check to see what the regulations are if you're leaving the country, to see both what the rules are going into that country and also leaving that country. One other thing too about traveling with waders, a lot of countries are very aware about whirling disease, which is a disease that happens in fresh water, affects trout and deforms trout. In New Zealand, when I've traveled there, they will check to see if your wading shoes are moist. If you have felt-lined shoes, you can bring felt-lined shoes, but if they're wet, they won't let you into the country with them. You'll have to leave them there in quarantine. If they're dry, and also what they really like is if they can smell where you've taken like a chlorine solution and put those along the sole to kill any of the bacteria that would cause the whirling disease. So those are some of the things that the traveling angler has to be aware of both getting your equipment in and out of the country, and then also not causing any kind of ecological problems with the equipment that you bring. So that's it for the equipment, and then I will cover the lures in more detail in the bonus section of the video. Thank you.
Any of the places that I go, there's not a tackle store anywhere nearby, so I need to bring the lures with me that I intend on using. The most valuable lure for me that catches the largest variety of fish anywhere in the world is a Rapala CD5. From sea bass in Hawaii to walleye in Missouri, the CD5 and its larger cousin, the CD7, are top producers. My favorite is the CD5 in the shad color, which is in the upper left. For warm tropical waters, try the blue CD7. And when the fish have lockjaw, try the gold shiner pattern. In saltwater, my go-to bait is a jig. I like a 1/8 or 1/4 ounce chartreuse jig head, and to it I'll attach a plastic body. There are several excellent manufacturers of these plastic body baits like DOA, Bass Assassin, and my personal favorite, Z-Man. I like Z-Man the best because it uses a more durable plastic that I can catch a dozen or more fish on just one bait. This more durable plastic, though, is harder to thread on a jig head, and it's important to use a jig that has a narrow throat so that you can get the Z-Man bait on it with ease. One of the jigs that works well with the Z-Man bait is the Strike King jig. With jig body colors, you'll need at least two. The two I recommend is a white or pearl for sunny days and also clear water, and then the Space Guppy or the green with gold speckles in it for darker days or cloudy days, and also when you're fishing in muddy water. A third color that works out well is a pattern called the Electric Chicken, and that is on the left-hand side. For freshwater fly fishing, I like two patterns, the pheasant-tailed nymph and also the woolly booger. Pheasant-tailed nymph is a top fly. I like that in size 14 or 16. The bottom two flies are woolly boogers. My favorite color is black, followed very closely by the green. The favorite sizes in this are size 10 and 12. For saltwater, these are my top four flies. Starting clockwise in the upper left-hand corner is a white and green streamer. With this, you can catch snook and trout are the most likely candidates. Moving over to the right, you have a Lefty's Deceiver with the red head and white feathers. This is great for snook and tarpon. Moving down to the lower left, you have what I call a crystal swimmer. The crystal swimmer is very good for night fishing for snook. You can also pick up bonefish with this fly. And then the last fly is a black clouser. This is deadly on the flats for like redfish and also picking up flounder. Rules can change on what you can and cannot bring on a plane. Be sure and check with the TSA before your trip for the most current regulations. Thank you for watching, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, and good luck on your next adventure.